Bright Cutie. Every student matters.
Hello students. Now let's talk about the February Revolution that happened in the year 1917. So here, now before the students, we have talked about the 1905 revolution, and this was the set of events that started with the main event, that was the Bloody Sunday, right? So here we have discussed a lot of points. After that, we talked about the First World War and its impact on Russia, right? We talked about how it impacted the Russian industries, and therefore it also impacted the lives of the common people in Russia, right? Now, since we have talked about the Russian Revolution, Russia, how was the condition in Russia, Russian people, and so on. Here we are going to talk about the main topic, the Russian Revolution, right, as the chapter's name suggests here. Now, if you remember students, in the introduction part only, we have discussed that the Russian Revolution, it was basically collectively, Russian Revolution was the part of this February Revolution as well as the October Revolution that took place in 1917. Now you remember this part? Yes. So here firstly, we are going to talk about the February Revolution that took place in 1917. Now, here when we are talking about the period 1917, we know that the First World War is still going on. But the condition here in Russia is quite different now, right? So when we are talking about the people who were living, we see that the division was quite evident in the layout of the city, right? So here, let's talk about the layout of the city in order to understand the lives of workers and the other people who were living here, right? It was the workers only who started the revolution. So we are going to focus what problems they were facing here and what led to the February Revolution, okay? And how was the autocracy impacted or affected by this whole revolution? We are going to understand here. Now, firstly, in order to understand the layout of the city, we have to see here in this map the Neva River. Now, why am I showing you this river? Because when we talk about the layout of the city, we see that on the left side and the right side of the river, the whole city was divided in this two major groups here. Now, why I'm saying two major groups here? Because on one side, we see that the group of workers and the poor people, they were living on the one side of the riverbank, and on the other side we see that all the fancy buildings, the government official buildings, and the rich people, they were living here. So talking about the left bank of river Neva, we see that all the important places, they were located here, such as the Winter Palace and all the other official buildings, right? So on the one side, we see that the influential people of Russia, they are living on the left bank of river Neva. But when we are talking about the right bank of river Neva, we see that the workers, they were living on this side. All the quarters and the factories, they were located on the right bank of river Neva. So this was the division, the layout of the whole city here, right? And when we are talking about February 1917, here we see that winter is quite bad in Russia, right? Heavy snowfall, right? During this period in Russia, heavy snowfall. So therefore, because of this bad weather conditions, what are we seeing? That the crops, they were destroyed, right? It also led to food shortages that were felt among the working class. So definitely the weather condition is not good. The crops, they have destroyed, right? Sorry, the crops are destroyed here, and it led to the food shortages. And therefore, all these workers who were living on the right bank of river Neva, they were not feeling so good about it. Already the working conditions were quite bad. they were facing scarcity of food, they were not given good wages, and they had to work for a longer period of time in these factories, in these industries. So therefore, they were quite agitated and they had certain demands that they wanted the monarch to fulfill. So winter was quite cold here, like I told you. Therefore, what happened on February 22, 1917? So this is the month of February. Remember students, we are talking about the February Revolution. So do not get confused here with the October Revolution or any other revolution. Just focus on the name and the year that we are speaking of here. So what happened after this? Since people were facing all these issues, what were the issues? I will repeat again. So here we are seeing that they are facing scarcity of food, right? The crops were destroyed there, therefore they were not getting sufficient food. Also, they had to work for a longer period of time. They were demanding for reduction of working hours. Apart from that, they wanted more wages as per the work that were being done by them. So all these major demands were there, and they saw that there is no improvement here in their working conditions, in their living conditions. So finally, these group of workers, they went on a lockout. So lockout took place at a factory here. More workers, they joined in sympathy, and even women, they joined the strikes. Now here what are we seeing? That women are also joining these strikes, and when women joined these strikes, it was known as the International Women's Day here, right? With the participation of women, it was now recognized as the international. Now, as you can see the image here, the revolution, it took place in Petrograd. So here the city that we are talking about is St. Petersburg, that was named or renamed as Petrograd. So do not get confused with the name here. And as you can see, the Russian army is stationed here, and the winter, the heavy snowfall that destroyed all the crops, and what were the conditions of the workers who were living in this region. Now, here all these demonstrating workers. Now moving on, we see that first the lockout has taken place. Now here we are discussing about the February Revolution in Petrograd. So the lockout has taken place in this region. Workers, they went on strikes. They had certain demands that they were shouting slogans on, right? So this was mainly demanding for bread. They were wanting more better living conditions. Apart from that, they were demanding for high wages and also reduction in working hours. So what are we seeing here? All these demonstrating workers, they moved towards the center of the capital. So they were moving towards the center of the capital, that is Nevsky Prospect. Okay, so this was the main point, the main road here where people, they moved towards this region here in Petrograd. Now, likewise, what are we seeing here? That there were no movements that were organized by the political party, right? All the political parties, till now, they were not involved in this movement, in this revolution here. And seeing the whole condition, right? The workers, they were joining in large numbers. Therefore, the government, they had to take the action here. Therefore, they imposed a curfew, right? In which people were not allowed to gather, right? They were not allowed to form the groups, and they were not allowed to basically revolt against the government, right? Against the Tsar here. And finally, we see that people, they moved apart. Again, they came back. They were now demanding more things here. They were coming in large numbers. So finally, looking at the overall situation here, what are we seeing? That the government, they had to take a strong step here. So finally, on 25th February, government suspended the Duma, right? So Duma here, this is the parliament that we are talking about. So the people in parliament, they were also against the Tsar. Why? Because the Tsar, he always wanted to suspend the Duma, right? And they were not in favor of that. So finally on 25th February, government suspended the Duma, and looking at all this situation, It was on 27th February 1917 that the common people, the local people here, they now attacked the government offices, government buildings. So firstly, police headquarters, they were ransacked, they were attacked by the common people here. Okay, so remember this point. This is how the revolution has started, and now people are attacking the government buildings. Why? Because the government is taking no major steps in order to look at the demands of these common people here. Okay. Now, soldiers and striking workers, they also gathered to form a Soviet or council. Moving on, what are we seeing here? We see that the common people here and the soldiers, they were also now joining the workers. Why? Because these soldiers, when they were asked to fire on the demonstrators, they refused to fire here. They refused to fire at the demonstrators, right? And Duma was already suspended. So the Tsar was not getting the support of all these people who were involved in the Duma, who were there included in the Duma. So the soldiers and these striking workers, they now gathered to form a Soviet or council. Now, do you remember the term Soviet? We already have discussed about it. So in simple terms, we can say that it is a council of peasants, of workers that was formed, right, in the revolution of 1917. Right, so we are seeing that these people, they are now forming Soviet, they are forming council, right? They are basically forming the Soviet, the council here, to discuss the tactics, how they are going to move forward with their demands, and how are they going to overthrow this existing government here, the existing Tsar who is doing nothing to improve their conditions. Now, military commanders, on listening all these things, what are they doing here? Now they decided to meet the Tsar. Who is the Tsar here? Nicholas II. So military commanders, they finally met the Tsar, and looking at the overall condition in Petrograd here, they advised the Tsar to abdicate. Now what is this abdicate? To step down, formally step down from the throne. Now they knew that people, they are not going to back out. They are forming Soviets, they are forming councils, they are becoming stronger day by day, and they can challenge the government anytime they want, right? Therefore, the best advice that military commanders, they could give the Tsar was to abdicate, to step down formally from the throne. Now, it was on 2nd March 1917 that abdication of Tsar, it took place in Russia on the advice of military commanders. Here, this is an important point. So the military commanders, they had succeeded in this plan that led to the abdication. Abdication, like I told you, this is the formally stepping down of the from the throne of whom? Of Tsar Nicholas II. Okay. Now here we see that the Soviet leaders, right? The Soviet leaders, with whom? With the Duma leaders here, right? The Soviet or the council that was formed and the Duma that was against the Tsar, they together, here they formed the provincial government. The provincial government, the spelling can be C here, S here, okay? So they formed the provincial government. Now, this provincial government, it was formed here under whom? It was formed under Alexander Kerensky. So you have to remember the name here, Alexander Kerensky. Under him, the provincial government was formed. Now finally, there was a formation of Constituent Assembly that was elected on the basis of universal adult franchise. Now here can you see how the revolution had taken place and what was its impact here? So these workers, they started demanding, they went on strike, now they were demonstrating, this led to the suspension of Duma. Apart from that, they attacked the police headquarters. The situation was quite bad there in Petrograd, and Soviet and councils were formed. Now this pressurized the Tsar to abdicate the throne, and on the advice of military commanders, he abdicated the throne. Now, this is how the fall of autocracy, took place after the February Revolution here, right? In the February Revolution, you can say that, in the February Revolution, we can say that this led to the fall of autocracy here, right? And they were elected, the Constituent Assembly here, they were elected on the basis of universal adult franchise. Universal adult franchise, what does that mean? Everyone had the right to vote. Okay. Now, fall of monarchy, form of the government with the help of February Revolution that was led by Petrograd. These are some of the points that I have already discussed. Now, Moscow was also taken here, right, with Petrograd. These were the two important cities of Russia here. And March 15, 1917, the first provincial government that was formed under Alexander Kerensky. So, these are some of the important points that you cannot forget, because this is the most important topic here of Russian Revolution, the February Revolution and the October Revolution as well, right? Now, coming to the exercise part here, let's have a look at these questions. The question says, who was the head of the first provincial government set up in Russia in March 1917? And the options are Lenin, Kerensky, Leon Trotsky and Tsar Nicholas II. Do you think Tsar Nicholas II was the head of the first provincial government? No. We saw that with the February Revolution, there was the fall of monarchy. So, you can eliminate this option here. Have you heard this name till now? Leon Trotsky? No. Lenin, we have heard, but we know that he was for sure related to Bolsheviks. Am I correct or not? Yes. So, therefore, the correct answer here is B, that is Kerensky. Okay. Now, discuss the causes that led to the revolution of 1917. Now, we know that 1917, when we are talking about, we have two revolutions here, the February Revolution and the October Revolution, right? But the February Revolution, it came first. So, if we are talking about the February Revolution, what can you write here? Now, in February Revolution, we can talk about the situation of 1917, about the winter that was quite harsh in Russia and how it had impacted the crops and that led to crop failure. We can also talk about the layout of the city that showed the division of people here in Petrograd, right? We discussed in the beginning. Then we can talk about the crop failure that had impacted whom? The workers who were already not living in a good condition, right? And how these workers, they went on strike and they were joined by 50 group of other, they were also joined by group of other workers from different factories here, right? Women also joined the strikes, right? And this event was now recognized as the International Women's Day here. Apart from this, when we are talking about the workers, you can mention about some other points here that they were facing. No better living conditions, wages were not increased, working hours were not reduced, right? And they were facing the scarcity of food, right? So, these points can be mentioned here. Now, we can also talk about how the government, the Tsar, he was ignorant to all the demands of these people, these workers. And therefore, this strike was now, it was taking place on a larger scale. Demonstrators, they marched on to Nevsky Prospect, right, the main area of the city, and how they attacked the police headquarters, how the Duma was suspended. So, all these points can be mentioned under February Revolution that led to the fall of monarchy in 1917. So, again, this is the main point that you have to mention here. Okay, do not forget to mention these points. Now, when we'll discuss about the October Revolution, we can mention those points as well. Now, why did the Tsarist autocracy collapse in 1917? Do you remember this point? We just have discussed it right now here, right? We can't forget that point. So, why did the Tsarist autocracy collapse? all the points that I have told you right now, you have to mention it here. By now, you should remember all these points, right? So these are the keywords that you cannot forget. Discuss about these conditions of, firstly, talk about the layout of the city. The city here that I'm talking about is Petrograd. Petrograd, that was renamed, right? And the original name here is St. Petersburg. Now, talking about the winters of 1917 in Russia, that led to crop failure, and workers who were agitated and they went on strike. They were joined by the workers from other 50 factories. Women also joined the strike. Mention that point as well. Then you can also talk about how these demonstrators, they marched towards the city here, the main point, towards the main point here, Nevsky Prospect. So, now here you can also talk about what? That no political organizations, they were involved initially here, and the government finally, looking at the condition, suspended the Duma, okay? And on 25th February, how these people, they attack, 27th February, how these people, they attacked the police headquarters, and the scene now it got worse here, right? So the police people who were there, policemen, they also refused to attack or fire on the demonstrators. The Soviets or the councils were formed here, right? And the same place where the Duma was meeting. So finally we see that the Soviet leaders, the Duma leaders, they decided to form what? They decided to form the provincial government. Before this, military commanders, they went on to advise the Tsar in order to abdicate. Looking at the condition of Russia, he had no other choice, he had no other option. People rose in revolt here and they challenged the existing system, right? So all these points have to be mentioned here in this question. That would be your complete answer of this question. Thank you.